What were the trends you saw with 609 entries into the inaugural year? What was some of the trends that you saw from the body of work that actually you're excited about going forward?
I think definitely there's some maturity happening with how brands are interacting with gaming. I mean, in the previous years, it was all about my brand on your shirt or my brand on your basketball court, right? It was all about, I'm going to plaster like this entire thing on a moving train, or get like a healing potion as like a soft drink. But now I think brands are learning to play. They are learning to be part of the entire experience, as you've probably seen in a lot of the winners or the shortlisted work. Definitely there is an improvement, but it can still be improved once you get to start knowing the community. I think later on we're going to talk about the Grand Prix, which I think was able to, be a masterclass in how you become part of the fandom. But in gaming, a lot of the advertising, principles need to change. I'm sure a lot of you guys are gamers, and the worst thing you want to see when you're playing is an ad. So how do we work with that as advertising people?
I think that word is really nice, playing, right? It's bringing back to the essence of creativity in a sense of actually a broad spectrum of things. And Francine, what other kind of thoughts had you had around the body of work that came through?
Yeah, the other interesting thing that we saw amongst a few of the winners was that you didn't necessarily have to change gameplay in order to do something interesting in the game. And I do think for many non-endemic gaming brands, that's the first place they want to go, is how do I change the game? And it's possible, and we actually saw some great work that did that. But that is, that's a long haul situation, it's very complex. And we saw some really creative, interesting ways of playing in the gaming space without doing that. So unbranded menu by McDonald's was one. The Fighting to Remember was another one. Using the game exactly how it is, but applying a really creative lens to think about it in a different way.
People are loving their McDonald's, and it seems the gaming world does too. This looks a lot like McD. So does this. And is this a Big Mac? A brand so iconic that video games have been mimicking them for years. Our menu was hiding in plain sight, all across the gaming multiverse. And all we had to do was invite gamers to branded McDonald's. This is Unbranded Menu. We identified the country's best gaming influencers, ranked them on reach and platform played, then teamed up with them to start a game within these games. Gamers love to screen grab their favorite gaming moments. So we challenged them to search across games, screen grab McDonald's food-alikes, and tag them #ThisIsMcDonald's. The fries in Goat Simulator? Branded McDonald's. The burger in Grand Theft Auto? Now a Big Mac. The burger in Final Fantasy XIV? You guessed it, a Quarter Pounder. Soon after, their legions of followers were tagging McDonald's all over.
This is McDonald's! This is McDonald's burger and fries! Yes! McDonald's fries ba to?
We powered up the hunt with customized responses, enabling gamers to turn their virtual finds to real McDonald's food. Delivered to them free.
And you can get a digital cheeseburger, digital fries.
Yes, and then I get the actual one delivered as well.
And now, whenever gamers find fast food in games, they think McDonald's.
Really interesting quote there is like, I hate branding in games, but this is cool. Joey, can you tell us a little bit about the discussions you had around this piece?
What's great about this piece, it comes from my country. And so I can talk about it in the context of how budgets are done in the Philippines. and how that cannot be a limitation when you think of a gaming idea. So one of the things that you will probably encounter selling a gaming idea is that how do I get in touch with a publisher and tell him that I want my exact fries to be in your game. So good luck telling that to Riot, right? And so what's great about Unbranded Menu is that they were able to do that without talking to any publisher. Because a lot of the gaming assets in most games look like McDonald's items, fries, burgers, sundae. And you probably have encountered a food alike in one of the games you're playing. I certainly have in Persona 5. And there is a burger there that you eat. It doesn't even look like McDonald's. It looks like Five Guys burger, but McDonald's claimed it. And that is the power of an idea. And I think the greatest lesson from this campaign is that while you probably think it's hard to sell a gaming idea to a client who is not familiar with games, there is a way to hack that and break through your limitations just by being creative and just by really understanding the community.
I love that. And when you were having those discussions, Lydia and Francine, why was this a piece that was awarded a silver, kind of building on from what you said? How did you decide?
Well, it's funny because this piece in particular we had a lot of debate over, and it was almost a gold. So we debated it quite a bit. We loved everything Joey mentioned about it, and I think the room was quite divided. There were some people who thought, the cleverness of this idea was really maybe potentially worth the gold. But then at the end of the day, there was so much great work that was in our category, and if you look at our golds, we do believe that they kind of stand a bit above this work. But the only reason it didn't hit the gold was just because we were so fortunate to have such strong creative work this year.
Well, let's move on to a gold piece. That was Fighting to Remember, and that came from McCann Tel Aviv for Zikaron Barcelone. And let's take a look at that piece of work.
It's my task, as long as I live, to tell the people what happened so it won't happen again.
גיימינג. זה אומר לך משהו?
בדרגת בדיוק ככה. אני עד היום רואה את האקדח מופנה למצח שלי.
היה לנו רימון, כי אם הם יבואו ויתפסו אותנו, אנחנו נתפוצץ.
You saw the parachutes?
Yeah, the Germans shot at them. Many were killed.
Francine, a really powerful piece. Can you tell us about the discussions you had in the jury room about this piece?
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked a lot about how this is a really hard problem to solve. You're trying to land a message like this with young people. And as we talked about before, young people don't want you to push messaging at them. And so what was really clever about this idea was they chose a platform where gamers already are. They're watching streamers. And it also taps into the ecosystem around gaming, which is another great lesson for brands, is it's not just about the game, it's also about the full ecosystem. And partnering streamers with the people who were there, with Holocaust survivors, who could tell their very personal experiences from the places that you play in COD. So I think that was a really clever way of using gaming. And the other thing that's really nice about this piece is how gaming used to be the thing that divided generations. And now we're seeing a few ideas, including this one, where it's really bringing generations together.
And if you were, a tough question, if you were to build on this, where would they go? Where could the team behind this go next with this piece?
Well, I think they have found a perfect platform in order to tell the message. And one of the pieces of magic of this idea is that it doesn't just happen once. Once the player goes through the experience, every time you watch another streamer stream COD, every time you play the game again, that message and that message that you saw, it sticks with you. So I think the power of this idea is that you don't need to build on it. You don't need to do more. You've already landed the goal.
Like hitting that message home really powerfully.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to move on to the Grand Prix winner from this year, and this was awarded to Clash from the Past by Wyden and Kenny Portland for Clash of Clans. So let's take a look.
Clash of Clans was celebrating its 10th anniversary. With 300 million daily players after 10 years, it's one of the most successful mobile games in the world. But gamers love games with history and lore. Clash didn't have that kind of story, so we made one up. Instead of celebrating our 10th anniversary, we celebrated our 40th and made the internet believe that Clash had existed since the 80s. The campaign started with an incredibly detailed documentary about 40 years of made-up history.
My name is Leo. I've been documenting Clash for 40 years. Yeah, 40 years.
To be clear, he's making that up. And we went to every length imaginable to make sure our made-up history felt as believable as possible.
An arcade Clash Mania is taking the world by storm.
For each decade, we built an entirely made-up visual world, from the Clash logo itself, the design of the game's main character, to game artwork, including posters, packaging, and even a real arcade cabinet. But we didn't just make the artwork, we made the fake games for real. An 80s arcade platformer, a 90s racer, and a 2000s open-world RPG. And then we re-released them in the Clash app so people could replay them. We reissued products that would have existed in our past and made them available for purchase.
On les appelle les boom booms.
Los boom booms.
On social, we staged a Reddit AMA with one of the fake founders from our documentary and took the Clash community on a fictional walk down memory lane. We hit #1 on YouTube. The cereal sold out, and brand lift amongst the game's fans was higher than we'd ever seen before. Why do we recreate 40 years of fake history? Because our fans don't just love a game, they love the game's universe. So we invented a bigger one.
So you talked about, creating a universe just a little moment ago, and this is creating just what is even bigger than a universe. It's incredible. Francine, can you tell us a little bit about how the discussions in the room around this piece?
What's really interesting about this piece is we didn't really discuss it till kind of the end, right? Because I think that we just knew, probably from the beginning, that it was a Grand Prix. And the process of judging, you talk about what the shortlist is, and the bronze, and the silver, and the gold. So it actually was quite late until we started discussing this work. And there are so many things about this piece of work that are exactly what you want. It's the gold standard in terms of gaming work. So one, it's incredibly creative and based on a strong idea. It also is insightful. We talked earlier about the fact that gamers don't just love games. They love the whole worlds that are created around them. And that's what they did. They created a whole world. And the other thing is it's incredibly brave, because gamers, they have a very high standard, especially if you're a player who loves an IP and someone's going to create a fake history. Well, you better do it really, really well. And they did that. They committed to the execution in authenticity. They were authentic in every element, not just making up the history or a story of what the history would have been done, but creating actual content over 40 years, creating the actual games, and doing it in a way that was authentic both to the IP of the game, as well as to all of those eras. And then the last thing I'll say about one of the things we loved about this is it's a master class in community building. If we go back to the criteria, it's about adding value to the player experience, and this does that in spades.
And I loved this from the first time I saw it, and I think you get that feeling of like jealousy, because I know in our team everyone loves like, let's do the 80s thing, let's do the 90s thing, but to go all in on every single thing, even the partners. But one of the things that stuck with me so much during the judging process was one of the judges in the room was a player, and he said that he felt nostalgia for something that didn't exist.
Kyle is here.
Yeah, well,
Kyle.
I wasn't gonna name it. It was him. But that to me, like, I was so happy to have a player's experience also watching it, because that's the magic, is that he was able to feel nostalgia for something that didn't exist. And like, that's what you want when you build that world out and you create something that people can connect with and will continue to connect with because they can play it and they can talk about it. And I just love that.
You probably feel our enthusiasm just talking about this piece. I mean, it makes you feel like a fan, right? And I think that's what's great about an idea in gaming that just pulls are the right buttons. It's an unblockable. There's no way to beat something like this. I mean, 40 years of fake history can either be great or be super bad. Because when gamers scrutinize a piece, they scrutinize it like down to the last detail. I mean, if unbranded menus screenshot food, they can easily screenshot little glitches and just blow it over in the fandom. But I guess what's great about Clash of the Past is that everything is done so well that it confused fans like Kyle. I mean, it confused him because he's suddenly nostalgic about something that didn't previously exist. So actually what this brand did is that they lied to the players. They just lied. But the fans love being lied to. I was like, oh, they lied, we love it. So it's amazing.
And you mentioned something there that kind of struck me, that they created all this content that was around the game, and actually that drew people into the game even more. Is that something that you see a lot, or is it something that is kind of a new idea?
I think one of the things that's nice about this is they did tap into the broader ecosystem. So creating content in games around the game, that's not a new idea. What they did is they tapped the whole ecosystem and they went really deep. They thought about, if this game was around in this era, what else would exist around it? So would there be cereal boxes? Would there be trading cards? And what would those games look like? And then they literally made them. They partnered with the General Millses and made all of these products.
Quite exciting, actually, to see what could come next with it as well. Before, I'm conscious of time, that we're nearly hitting time. So what I'd love to understand is, what can brands and agencies and people thinking of getting into this space, what can they do? What can they learn from? Lydia, do you want to?
Yeah, I think because I'm on the brand side, we can always tell if someone in the agency has a player on their team. So as soon as you start talking to a client, as soon as you know their game, find someone on your team that knows and loves the game, or find someone in your life that knows it, or find both, or start playing. It really makes such a difference. I can always tell if there was a player on the team, even if it's not the perfect thing, the perfect pitch right off the bat, the perfect idea. You can feel that they know more about the brand. It's something they couldn't have read online. They couldn't have just thought about themselves, because they definitely had a player. So to me, that's something that can really bring this for players by players experience.
I will build on what Lydia said, because sometimes some really great ideas are being killed by people who do not understand gaming. I have seen that myself. Most players in this age are younger, which means they do not have the titles to make approvals, right? these younger players who understand the community, who understand the game, sometimes report to people who do not know or play the games. Therefore, some ideas die in the process. So I love what Lydia said about listening to players, even if these players are juniors, or even young 12-year-old sons and daughters, because they would know the game better than anyone. So sometimes you cede the authority to someone who is younger, because in this day of an age of gaming and community and fan building, an expert can come at any age or in any gender. It doesn't matter as long as you're a fan.
And I would build on that. I think that's absolutely right. Like, being made by players and fans for fans, that's how you get that authenticity. And as we think about more brands entering the gaming space, I think it's about that deep collaboration. The collaboration between the game company and the brand and the agency, because each one's going to bring something very different to the table. You're going to have a really strong understanding of what the brand story is, the brand objectives, the gameplay, the audience and players of that game, the community, how they'll react, and then culture. And it really is at the intersection of all those things where great ideas are born. And when you have a great idea, that's what can transform everything.
And taking all of that, and if anybody in the audience has started on that journey, what advice would you give them to enter into this line next year to actually set the benchmark for it going forward?
Be brave. You know, gaming is still uncharted, relatively uncharted, and there's a ton of opportunity. It's an amazing canvas to play on for brands, and oftentimes you're going to be the first one to explore a certain part of the ecosystem, a certain idea. And I think our Grand Prix winner shows us that the biggest risks can have the biggest payoffs.
To build on that, because we love building worlds, I think in gaming, as in advertising, when you fail, you just respawn. So if one idea dies, you just make another, and you keep trying, because again, in this age of experimentation, it's our first lion in gaming, and so gaming is still very new, so just keep trying, keep experimenting, and have fun.
What do you want to take back with you when you go home to your teams?
When I think of Clash from the past, I love how they took one idea and really turned it into the campaign in such a clear way. Every single idea fed into Clash from the past. And I think it's so hard when you start creating things and you're kind of like, this could work and that could work, and I definitely want to take back that like single-minded focus, because I think it created something so beautiful and something that all of those players could love, and that it could bring new players. Like after watching it, I was like, I want to watch that and play the game. And so I really think just taking the core sort of simple idea, what if this was made 40 years ago, and just every single thing that you do serves that purpose. And to me, I think that's something I'm going to take away.
Joey, same question to you.
I think listening to fans is key in gaming, most especially, because fans will always be your co-creators, and they will always give you the feedback that you need. So if the feedback isn't good, then that means you pull. And then if the feedback is good, you push. Right? So again, it's a very close collaboration with the community. Sometimes you pick ideas from the community. I think in advertising, we've always kind of present our ideas forward and not with the community. But in gaming, it's really so important to listen, participate, and collaborate with the community.
Francine, I guess, same question to you.
Yeah, mine's also around community. To build on what Joey said, I think the big thing is, how do you serve the community but do it in a very unexpected way? How do you give them something they've always wanted but never knew that they wanted? Because as we know, players are so passionate And when you're able to tap that passion for positive, they will be your biggest advocates.
And I guess my final question is, was there anything within the body of work that surprised you, that you weren't expecting to see, that really, it may have been shortlisted, or what was it in there that actually you hadn't seen before? Maybe Francine?
We talked a lot in our jury about what the body of work would represent, especially given that this is the first year of the Gaming Lion and the signals that we wanted to send coming out of this body of work. And what we did notice, or what we ended up choosing, is you'll see that in the golds, the only brand that exists there is the FIFA and Ted Lasso work, which is amazing. We didn't have an opportunity to talk about it today, but that work's amazing. But there wasn't work from an FMCG brand or retail brand at the gold or Grand Prix level. And we debated that quite a bit because we wanted to ensure that that was well represented. And at the end of the day, I think the lesson here is that there's still an opportunity for non-endemic brands to do creative work at the highest levels of gaming. And there were silvers and bronzes, so there is some of that work, but there's still a huge opportunity.